In this WrestleTalk news, when will Charlotte Flair be able to leave WWE? The AEW Impact relationship is still on the table, my review of SmackDown and Tempest review of Rampage. Super click that subscribe button and elbow drop the notification bell to always on for daily wrestling news.
Support WrestleTalk!
Hey, the costume was good enough for the elite. It's good enough for me. Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch's title exchange segment is still being talked about 1 week on, with various reports of heat on Flair backstage, Sonya Deville being angry about the situation, and WWE pulling Charlotte from all media appearances this week. There's even been speculation that this could spell an end to Flair's relationship with WWE. And it's also no secret that Andrade El Idolo wants to have his family with him in All Elite Wrestling, which would include Roosh, Dragon Lee, Dralistico, Ric Flair, and Charlotte Flair. But unless some drastic measures are taken by either Charlotte or WWE, that won't be happening anytime soon. As Dave Meltzer noted in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, that Flair has a long time, said to be more than a year, left on her WWE contract. Plus, she's paid like 7 figures, so just in case if you were wondering if there's an incentive there. Meltzer has also elaborated on the reported heat that Charlotte has backstage, stating that one of the complaints is that Flair wants to be a heel, is a heel, but does babyface moves during her matches, notably the dives or moonsault in and out of the ring. Rhea Ripley's lack of position is also reportedly being attributed, at least partially, to Flair, with some people thinking that Ripley should have wound up the Raw Women's Champion rather than Charlotte at the end of their feud. However, in fairness, it's also been mentioned that most of that feeling is directed at Vince McMahon, as he is the man in charge and makes all the final decisions. What do you make of this whole Charlotte Flair situation? Let me know in the comments down below, because I'll be replying to people for the first 30 minutes after this video goes live from my desk. Impact and AEW's working relationship reportedly came to an end at this past weekend's Bound for Glory, with Christian Cage dropping the title to Josh Alexander, who then dropped it to Moose. This was seen as a bit of a disappointment, as while Impact has gained more interest this year from fans via the partnership, AEW never took full advantage of the situation, particularly as the women in the AEW locker room were petitioning to Tony Khan for them to work with Impact's Knockout division, one of the strongest in the whole country. It also means that Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson won't be part of the elite faction in AEW. Meltzer has noted in The Observer that while no one from AEW is planned for Impact shows going forward, a source at Impact has said the door is still open to do more stuff. It's just that nothing has been planned for the short term. It's also specified that Don Callis will remain with AEW going forward as the manager of Kenny Omega, despite not appearing on TV recently. But now it's time for my review of WWE SmackDown in about 5 minutes.
Are you ready for a good time?
Because Charlotte Flair's opening the show. I can't see that going horribly wrong. In reality, this was just your standard Flair promo, which brought out Sasha Banks. And I was all ready to type my notes, I want something new, and then Shotzi Not Blackheart came out. What a wonderful surprise. And it led to her and Charlotte Flair having a championship contenders match with solid action throughout, but had a really duff finish. Banks was out there acting as a cheerleader for Shotzi and, for no reason whatsoever, got up on the apron and caused a distraction. She wasn't trying to cause a distraction, she just did it because she's a tool, and WWE don't know how to book baby faces or good finishes. This gave Flair the win, and then Shotzi attacked Banks after the match. And apparently this is a heel turn, but given that Shotzi was well within her rights to kick the cash out of Sasha's Banks, this was 100% justified. I'm not booing Shotzi, she's right. I'm also way more into the idea of Banks versus Shotzi than I am Banks versus Flair. Adam Pearce has fined Brock Lesnar $1 million. And Drew McIntyre beat Mustafa Ali with ease, prompting Ali to cut a promo saying that people only boo him because of his name. New Day met Hit Row backstage, who supported Woods as king, so they're definitely babyfaces on SmackDown. Xia Li got a video package saying she's coming soon. Nothing ever good comes from a coming soon video package. And King Woods knighted Kofi Kingston to be his hand to the king, a reference to Game of Thrones, a show that ended 2 years ago and stopped being a pop culture reference 10 years ago, which is pretty rich of me to say because I just referenced Austin Powers, a movie that came out in 1997, and I'm dressed as a Ghostbuster, a film that came out in 1984. This brought out the Usos, which, I gotta be honest, I'm not that interested in seeing. Look, don't get me wrong, when they have matches, it's always great. And I've loved pretty much every single one of the feuds that they've had. But if you keep running the feud, eventually it gets stale. And with so many new and fresh faces on SmackDown, I'd much rather Hit Row come out and face off with the New Day. And I'm sure we'll get there, but you're diluting the specialness of the Usos and the New Day in the process. They agreed to have a match later on. I'm just thrilled that they're calling him King Woods instead of King Xavier. Speaking of running things back, and Baron Corbin had another f***ing match with Shinsuke f***ing Nakamura. Why won't this f***ing match f*** off? So sick of watching these two wrestle. Oh, so sick of watching these two wrestle. They've been having this feud since May. The Eurovision Song Contest started in May. That was so long ago. They've had 11 matches on TV since May. Who could possibly care about these people in the ring? Certainly not the crowd, as they sat on their hands for the rather tedious trick or street fight, which the bad guys won when Garza and Carrillo interfered. Please let this be the end. Shayna Baszler quickly beat Naomi with Sonya Deville as a stand-in referee. Good stuff. And the main event saw New Day beat the Usos, but it wasn't a championship contenders match. So I don't know if this does get them a title shot. And having said that, Shotzi and Tegan didn't get a title match, and they won 3 championship contenders matches. So maybe the rule is you have to pin the champions in not a championship contenders match in order to get a championship match. Anyway, this was good. And it was a decent episode of SmackDown this week. Nothing outwardly bad, just pretty boring stuff we've seen before. And I'm disappointed in that because of the two shows. I think SmackDown has the more interesting roster with new and fresh faces. I really don't know why Baron Corbin is having another f***ing match with Shinsuke Nakamura. This week's SmackDown is a solid 3 out of 5. Now over to Tempo T Wrestlo for the Rampage review.
What's going on, WrestleTalk friends and fans? Tempest is back, dressed up in full Halloween garb, it seems, to give you another review of AEW Rampage in about 3 minutes. So this show opened with the next match in the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament as Bryan Danielson took on Eddie Kingston. This was such an amazing match. Bryan Danielson does such a good job of wrestling his opponent's style and making it absolutely unique from all of his other matches. If you look at each of his AEW singles matches to this point, his match with Kenny Omega, Minoru Suzuki, Bobby Fish, now Eddie Kingston, Dustin Rhodes, they've all been totally different, but they've all been so good. And Eddie Kingston, props to Eddie Kingston, he absolutely brought it on this night. He's great anyway, but on a night like this against maybe the best wrestler in the world in Bryan Danielson, Eddie Kingston showed that he was just as good. Of course, this match built throughout, with the two exchanging a series of kicks and chops. Bryan Danielson's chest looked like it was beat red by the end of this, and eventually he was able to get Eddie Kingston to pass out in a triangle choke. Bryan Danielson moves on to the finals at Full Gear. We need to start having the conversation about if Bryan Danielson is in fact the best wrestler in the world, because honestly, I would like to hear the argument otherwise. I'm so excited for what Bryan Danielson might be able to bring to the future of AEW, and this match, it's a great way to start off Rampage. This gets a 5 out of 5. We had a quick backstage interview with CM Punk before Eddie Kingston came in and started making a ruckus. Still very pissed off that he lost that match. It seems like we're gonna get a match between Punk and Kingston, maybe at Full Gear? I don't really know. I like that. That match sounds like a lot of fun. But the next match was the third match in the series between Dante Martin and Matt Sydal. Of course, this was the high-flying match on the show, with Dante Martin and Matt Sydal exchanging moonsaults and hurricane ranas and deep arm drags and everything that you're expecting from these two guys. It was just so much fun. I said on Twitter after AEW Dynamite this week that there's one match on every show that feels like a party, and it makes you want to be there live. For this show, that was this match. High-flying wrestling, when done well, is maybe the most fun wrestling to actually watch live, and this match was no exception. There were tons of really good near falls in this match too, and eventually Dante Martin was able to get the win with his double springboard moonsault, the biggest win of his career so far, beating Matt Sydal. Honestly, I couldn't expect that much more out of a match like this. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5 as well. And then we had the main event as Britt Baker took on Abaddon in a trick-or-treat match. match. Now, this main event could go one of two ways, depending on how you feel about Abaddon. Personally, I'm not that big into the whole, ooh, spooky undead wrestler thing, but I will say this is probably the best match that I've seen Abaddon have. They did some pretty unique hardcore spots, even though the table they used in this match just did not want to break. Damn it, I should have put I am the table on the thing. Alright, next time. On 2 occasions, that table just refused to break, and then they got out thumbtacks, and they were like rolling around in the thumbtacks. Oh God. I'm not a big fan of hardcore matches anyway, but I can find the enjoyment when I watch one every once in a while. That being said, the finish of this match took the whole thing down a peg. Just as they were exchanging near falls and Britt Baker almost put the mandible claw on Abaddon, I wouldn't want to put my hands in that woman's mouth. But just as they were going through those spots, Reba got on the apron and Jamie Hayter hit Abaddon from behind, allowing Britt Baker to roll up Abaddon for the win. This was not my favorite Rampage main event by any means. I did have fun with it while it was on, but that finish just wasn't very good. I'm going to give this main event a 3 out of 5. Now overall, this was another really fun episode of Rampage. There were 2 excellent matches on this show, and if the main event had been just a little bit better, this would have been an easy 5 out of 5 show. As it stands, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 just because the main event fell a little bit flat at the end, but otherwise, this was a fantastic show. The opening match is one of the best matches you'll see all week. And that just about wraps it up for me. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this week's show, you can go over to WrestleTalk Podcast later on today, where myself and Luke Owen DAD will be breaking down this entire episode of Rampage and last night's SmackDown in complete detail. Until then, take care, have a happy Halloween, and I was the Blue Ranger all along!
I love the New Day in all respects but one. Don't you tell me not to be sour. I was born sour, then I became a wrestling fan. It got worse since then. Kofi Mania was one of those flukes of wrestling, the kind of accidental lightning in a bottle events that reminds you that A, wrestling is a living, breathing product